Madadine Ahmed, tell us the answer to the first question. What is epistemology?
Well, epistemology is the theory of knowledge. In answer to the question, how do you know what you know? What is knowledge? How is it acquired? And how it differs from belief.
Don, what is your definition of the word?
I think that's certainly a very standard and basic definition. I don't have any problem with it. The defining what epistemology is rather easy. Trying to decide what distinguishes truth from belief, from knowledge, are ancient philosophical problems discussed in all philosophical cultures from the time of the ancient India, ancient Greece, China, down to the present. And philosophers have said a lot, but in many ways we are responding to the same questions that our ancestors were confronted with thousands of years ago.
George?
Great. Well, to follow along on those observations, it seems to me that the issue about epistemology in modern times has been cast against a somewhat skeptical horizon. And that is what is the real challenge today. Should we be skeptical and feel that we don't know? Should we think that we begin from not knowing? Or do we begin by knowing and then reflecting on what it is that's going on? The latter, I think, is extremely important in order to avoid a skepticism and in that way an impediment to knowledge.
Yes, the skeptic has been a problem for some time. In this environment, particularly in this media-driven environment that we have, this market-driven environment, can you tell us why the study of epistemology is relevant in this environment? George, I'll come back to you.
I think it's extremely important because we're engaged in an environment, we're engaged in a world, and we're not rocks, and we're not angels. So here we are in this situation in a world that is physical and that we have to find meaning for as regards our own life and our own relations with others. So this is where then understanding knowledge becomes very important. Without that, we then move towards hopelessness and despair, etc.
Relevance, Don?
Yes, I think it's certainly very relevant. We read the newspaper and just the subset of politicians have all sorts of different ideas and views and criticize each other, but epistemology enables us to step back, see the structure of arguments, and get a better sense as to what is at stake, particularly what is being appealed to. Sometimes it's just raw emotions. Well, I just know that's true. Sometimes it's religious authority of some kind. Sometimes it's carefully reasoned scientific argument, which may appear to be very valid, but then in many cases, other scientists can come in and say, well, looks good, but there's a big problem here. So I think epistemology gives us a sense as to how human opinions differ and how they can be resolved in a way which avoids skepticism, as George was saying, but yet doesn't require us to become basically a rock and just have one opinion and tell everyone else to go, you know?
I quite agree. Relevance, Dr. Madadine.
Well, the relevance is extremely important for a number of reasons. First off, just, the old saying about who builds his house on sand will inherit the wind. And certainly knowing the theory of knowledge, how you know what you know, is necessary before you can move on to making claims about what you do know. Also, I'd like to elaborate on the points raised by my colleagues here, what Professor McLean said about skepticism. Nowadays there are secondary questions that arise other than the ones we named in defining epistemology. Questions about, is knowledge even possible? Can we know anything at all? And there are people who sincerely doubt that. So unless we explore the meaning of knowledge in some terms, that's a trap we can fall into. Also, the point that was raised by Don is important about political argument. We seem to have nowadays a growing tendency to believe that whether something is true or not is irrelevant, and that I can go ahead and set political policy based on what might be the case, which can, I think, recent experience has shown, can be a very dangerous way of proceeding, and can get ourselves in all kinds of problems. So we have to go back to those first questions. How do you know what you know?
What I've been experiencing in media is that we get a lot of information, but how is it that we determine what's correct or not? Are we using the same kind of system? I'm just putting it out there just for discussion.
Well, this is one of the things that has changed over the centuries. The questions about epistemology have always been the same, but the answers have evolved, and of course not just evolved with time, but I think you'll find differences from one culture to another, and within a culture you'll find competing theories of epistemology and people who have very different views about how to decide what is true or false, how to decide what is known or not known, how to decide what is worthy of belief and what is unworthy of belief.
Excellent. George, tell us from your perspective, what is belief?
Belief can be understood in many different ways. Belief might be a conviction that something that I hold is true. I think that a very interesting character and dimension of belief is that we affirm something and we affirm it on the basis of a capable witness to that. And this capable witness becomes very important because if we're thinking about the meaning of life, if we're thinking about the values that we hold, if we're thinking about ways of relating to others, this is not something that we just make up on the moment and in a basic way of avoiding a problem or something like that. This has to be something which has been learned and experienced and tested and developed through the whole history of humanity. And I think that's where the great religious traditions come in. They're developed over mega centuries, and it's the wisdom of the people. So I see belief then as basically this wisdom of the people which reaches beyond particular details, but sets a human mode of interrelation and a high mode of human hope.
Interesting.